Welcome to part 2 of this screencast. I ran out of time, so I'm going to continue on with the part 2. So strings. It's very important that students have high quality strings for their instrument. You can get them from Shar or Southwest strings. For violin strings, dominant strings are just fine. That's the brand Dominant. For cello strings, I always encourage Larson strings. But I would encourage you just to maybe go to a store and just ask what are good strings for the instrument for a student model, and they'll help you out. But you also can order them online from Shar or Southwest strings. And again, I would encourage you to have a set of extra strings, in particular for violin and viola players. Cellos, I know, and basses, I know extra strings are very expensive. So cellos, I would just encourage you to maybe have an extra A string in the event that the A string breaks, because that will break a lot easier than the thick C string. Personal instruments. You can store your instruments in the orchestra room. We have cubbies for the violins. I would encourage you to make sure that you do not leave your instrument out in the hallway like some people have the tendency to do. Please just continue, walk in the orchestra room and actually put it in away. Also make sure that you check your insurance coverage. Stuff happens. You know, instruments are dropped accidentally here and there. I would encourage you to just double check your insurance coverage to make sure that your instrument is covered and how it's covered. I know for me, for my cello, I have special cello insurance, and that's been really helpful when I had to fly one time and there was some damage to the cello. So make sure that you understand how your instruments are covered. You can rent an instrument here at Mounds for $50. The cellos and basses will get to use the instruments here. Also, if they're violin or viola players that want to utilize that, they can use an instrument here. For $85, if you're a violin or viola player, you can bring your instrument back and forth if you rent it from me. And for $125, you can rent an instrument to have one at home and one at school. I need the rental forms back by 9/20 and make checks out to District 621. So, as mentioned, there are several orchestras, and some of those orchestras require auditions. So in April, we audition for our concert and symphony orchestras. Those orchestras are for 10th through 12th graders, and they'll get all the information come January. But it's important that students know the process. And also, one thing I like to tell students to know where they're at. For concert orchestra, if we're using the Suzuki books as kind of seeing where we're at, concert orchestra, they should be around book 5. And symphony orchestra, they should be around book 6. That's a guideline, not a rule, but that's kind of gives you a sense of the level of concert and symphony orchestra. There is Allstate. This is for kind of really the top students, those students that are playing standard concertos. That occurs in the middle of March. It's really a wonderful opportunity. But all students will need to prepare a solo. They will play these solos for a judge on either March 1st or March 3rd, depending on the orchestra you're in. We do lots of trips throughout the year. We have a 3-year rotation with having an international trip. Then the next year we do a domestic trip, and then the year after that would be a local trip. This year is the local trip, and we are looking into potentially going to Chicago, but we also may not do a trip this year just to prepare for next year's international trip. So next year's trip is going to be to London and France. Looking forward to that, and we will have to do registration by the end of this year. So probably coming in January, you're going to be getting some more and more information about that. We do some fundraisings in order to help support students. We are planning on doing impact cards. I need to set that up, and hopefully that'll happen before it snows, so students can go and sell these coupons. We have a Amazing Boosters Club that I'll talk about in a moment. Our Barnes & Noble and Pajama Concert, those are fundraising performances, and those performances go to the general account, and what I do is I use that money to offset the cost of Laurentian, so to keep the cost down for individual students. For the impact cards, I keep track of who sells how many coupons, and I put that into their own account, or I keep track of how much they raised, and so that way the students who want to participate in impact cards can and raise money specifically for their trips. It will not go to the general account. So that's only for the impact card fundraising. So it's really important that we understand that orchestra is a class, but it's also an activity, because there are lots of various things that we do through the Minnesota State High School League, including the regional solo ensemble contest, large group contests. So all the drugs and alcohol and tobacco violations from the Minnesota State High School League go into play for orchestra as well. All right, we have the Mounds Orchestra Association is our booster club. It's an amazing group of parents who are trying to support individual students in a different way than I can. And they've been an amazing support system. They've been able to do a lot of extra things for this amazing program, such as they helped get a facility for a symphony, our symphony concert last year. They purchased senior gifts. They have helped with scholarship opportunities, and they're going to be doing some different things this year. And this year is going to be really exciting because we have officially gotten our government approval, or 503c status, and so they're going to be doing more intensive fundraising this year, and you'll be getting more information about that. The goal for their fundraising is, instead of making students or parents going and selling anything, they're just going to ask for a direct drive. We know here at Mounds View that students are really busy, and it's been kind of told that students want to do less fundraisers versus more fundraisers. So we're just going to specifically, or the boosters at club are going to specifically at a certain point just ask for direct drive donations to help support the students here in orchestra. So you're all members, and if you want to be more involved, they are going to have meetings, and I'll get information for that soon. Okay, there are some chamber music opportunities. I think chamber music, which is a small ensemble, is an amazing thing. So chamber strings, you can have auditions. Those auditions start tomorrow. So students should be signed up for that. That meets every Thursday from 6:30 to 7:15 a.m. and it's a really great group, and we play lots of performances throughout the year. There are other opportunities, and we try to get lots of different quartets organized. All right, private lessons. So I would strongly encourage all students to take private lessons if it's in the means in the schedule. There are 250 students here, and I don't have the margin in the day to give everybody a private lesson throughout the week, and I wish I could. But private lessons is a really wonderful way to supplement their instrument. And I have a list of private teachers, so if you want to give me an email, I will send you that list. And it's really a great thing to push a student to continue their development. So we do have some leadership council opportunities. I have some seniors already that are kind of working on getting a couple things organized, in particular preparing for Laurentian. This kind of goes without saying, but orchestra is a class. Students need to be at class. They can't skip class, and if they do, it's just like any other class, and I'll contact the deans, and they'll have to work out the consequences. So it's very important that students are here and ready to rehearse and work. We will have performance assessments throughout the year, and students will have to perform for me, and they'll be graded upon their performance, and they're kind of assessed on tone, rhythm, intonation, bowings, vibrato, technique, and musicianship. Playing tests will cover various skills, and a lot of times it will be using selections from their orchestra music. We'll also be testing on scales, and the testing happens during class, and sometimes those tests will use a metronome. So in this program, there are students that come from lots of different places, lots of different abilities, and it's important that students know how they can get help if they need it. I tell students all the time that I am here for them, and I just want their growth. And so I tell them that if they want to come and get a private lesson with me during lunch or after school, that they can just do it. Whatever I'm doing, I'll just drop it and I'll give them a quick lesson. And so students that want extra help and support, they can get it. They just have to come in and seek it out. So we do have some written work, tests and quizzes and evaluations. We do work on musical terms, music history, music theory, and students should know that it's not 100% getting ready for performances. We do have other aspects through our Minnesota standards that we have to try to meet. At some point we will be working on getting some orchestra shirts or sweatshirts organized for the year. I think it's really great to have students wearing Mounds View Orchestra apparel, so keep your eye out for that. So as parents, what can you look for? The goal is that students are practicing. I want students to practice. Practicing is a really important part of playing an instrument. Now, it's not just about quantity, how much they're practicing, it's also quality. We want to make sure the students are having good practice. Now, as a parent, I have a lot of parents asking me, what can we do? And what I always suggest is just have a conversation with your child and ask them, what are their goals? Are they wanting to get into symphony next year? Are they wanting to make All-State? Are they wanting to go to music school? And depending on what those goals are, there's a certain response to those goals. So if they're wanting to get into symphony next year and they're not quite at book 6 level, and it means that they're going to have to work extra hard throughout the year to get there. So it's important that you just kind of have those conversations with the student and ask what the goals are, ask them what they're hoping to get out of it, and ask them what do they need to do, and then ask them how can you as the parent keep them accountable to meet those goals. I think that's a perfectly acceptable conversation to have. And I'll also try to do similar things on my end, but you see them every day. You hear if they're practicing or not practicing. So this is where I have any questions, but since this is a screencast, you can't actually ask me questions. But if you want to send me an email, you can. It's lucas.sjogren@moundsviewschools.org. That would be great. Anyways, thanks so much for listening to the screencast, and hopefully this was helpful. If you have questions, let me know. I'm looking forward to a great year here at Mounds View.